Hi there class, this little video tutorial is to give you some of the theory background for brick training, and this is a method of training that we will be introduced to and using within the next few lessons. Brick training is a specific design of training that allows you to train for transition, so moving either from swimming into your cycling or more commonly from your cycling leg into your running leg. So as we know, there are two transitions in our triathlon. The first, which is the swim to the bike leg, is considered to be the easiest of the two, mainly because the muscles that you use for the swim are quite different to the ones that you use for the cycle. So you tend to start your cycle with still relatively fresh lower body muscles. However, the bike and the run, by the time you get to the run, your muscles are already quite fatigued. So it can be far more challenging. So when we're doing our bike and our run, we're pretty much using the same energy system. So right at the top of our intensity level for use of the aerobic energy system, and at times starting to move up above an aerobic threshold as required. As we've already mentioned, your large muscle groups have already been fatigued by quite a long cycle. So your glutes, quads, hammies, calves, and your core muscles as well. When you begin your run, you're already coming in quite fatigued, and after, at this point, probably close to an hour of high-level physical activity already, your body is generally going to be quite fatigued. So the brick training pretty much is very, very specific to triathlon and practicing coming off the bike and going into the run. It allows us to prepare not only physically but also mentally, and we should see over time some adaptation where that transition becomes easier as we train in it more. So some of the mental adaptations or mental rehearsals that we can do are things like practicing the routines around rules. So you must put your helmet on before you de-rack your bike, and then when you bring it back you must rack your bike before you can remove your helmet. Practicing some of those things makes sure we don't break any of the rules in competition either. So what does it look like? I'm not 100% sure why it's called brick training, but it's almost as if you're stacking like bricks of work on top of each other. And so what we're really doing is alternating work periods of cycling with running, back to cycling again and back to running. We're looking at approximately 4 to 5 kilometres of cycling, followed by a kilometre of running, and then we repeat that over and over, up to 4, 5, 6 times, depending on how much time you've got. Research actually shows us that a higher cycling cadence will produce a faster leg turnover and therefore faster running speed during your run. Now, your cycling cadence is how fast your legs are turning around. So if you've got a big gear on and your legs are turning very slowly, it's actually not conducive to having the best speed in your run. So during the cycle, but particularly as you come into transition for that last kilometre perhaps, you really want to drop the gears a little bit and make sure you've got a really nice fast turnover with your cadence to sort of maximise the speed during your run. You need to figure out what intensity you can handle, and you might this might take a few goes of brick training before you see how far you can actually push yourself. So we're going to be doing it down on our Battery Road circuit. The cycle loop is a little bit shorter than what is desirable. Ideally you'd be doing it over 4 kilometres, but it works for where we're located. And then followed by a Kenny Ave Bull Road circuit with our run, which is just fractionally over 1 kilometre. What I'd like you to do is to map out your own brick training route from where you live. So a little circuit that's 4 to 5 kilometres for your bike, coming back to home, or a safe place where you can leave your bike as you embark out onto your run circuit. You can also do brick training if you've got a stationary bike and a treadmill, or at a gym if it doesn't work for you out in the open. So there might be a little bit of an argument. Is brick training continuous or interval training? People that argue that it's interval training might say, well, it's alternating intervals of biking and running. People that say it's continuous training will say, well, you're sort of sustaining a certain level of your training zone regardless of whether you are cycling or running. and you're using the same sort of components of fitness, the same energy systems, and sort of the same main muscle groups. So I like to kind of think of brick training as kind of a blend of these two approaches, maybe a more modern approach to training that's highly specific to triathlon, and particularly to the second transition of triathlon. You definitely use brick training in your race phase training, where you're looking at moving into higher intensity and more sort of specific training. Your frequency would be once a week, potentially twice a week maximum if you felt that this was an area that you needed to work on, and you needed to make sure that you build some recovery time in if your intensity is really high. You'll find that the intensity is higher, and just as you come into transition, so coming in on your bike, and then as you take off on your run, you might find that you actually go in up above your anaerobic threshold as you sort of burn into the transition zone, and then as you take off to get a good position on your run, and then pull back so that you're back in your aerobic zone there. One of the great things about brick training is you get to train both disciplines in a single session, and for me, I know that the hardest part of triathlon is always that sort of numbness that I have when I get off the bike and I go for my run, and for about the first K I can't even feel my feet. So for me, this really improves the area that I consider to be my weakest in training. So girls, I hope that helps with your understanding of brick training. If you're going to use it as a strategy in planning your program, the theory in this little video should contribute to some of the reasons why and some of the theory that you might draw on. And I look forward to seeing and hearing your responses after our practical session. Thanks very much.